Over the course of a year, we share a lot of food with you all, and if you are looking for the best of the best, this is the video for you. These are the ones that I would highly recommend adding into your 2025 regular food rotation because not one of them disappoints. They are our top of the year. Tonight for dinner, we are having a Korean beef in the crock pot. Really easy to make and pull together. I'm gonna go ahead and do everything now. I also have some rice that we're gonna prepare to go with this, and I'm thinking about maybe doing some green beans on the side. All right, so I'm gonna use my measuring glass bowl thing here as a mixing bowl. The first thing I wanna add is some minced garlic. You could add, dried garlic if you want to, but I'm gonna add about 2 cloves of garlic. We have a half cup of, this is the no soy sauce, but you can use soy sauce, low sodium, whichever you prefer. Coconut aminos would be fine. If you are gonna use coconut aminos though, I highly suggest cutting down on the brown sugar content. I'm already cutting down on the brown sugar, but coconut aminos is a lot sweeter than soy sauce. For the brown sugar, we're using a half cup of brown sugar to get that mixing together. Okay, I am gonna add a little bit of cayenne chili pepper, and you can skip this if you don't want any heat at all. Just a touch though. It's really probably a 1/4 teaspoon, not very much. You can add red pepper flakes, whatever your preference is there. And I have about a 1/4 cup of tapioca flour. Feel free to use cornstarch. I'm gonna mix it. Actually, let me switch to my whisk. We're gonna whisk it together and then add a little bit more, whisk that together, add a little bit more, making sure I get it nice and combined. A little more. And the last bit. Okay, I'm gonna set this to the side for just a minute and kind of let all those flavors sit together and work together. The brown sugar is almost dissolved at this point, but I really would like for it to completely dissolve. So if I just set it to the side for a second, that's gonna help that work. We are using flank steak today, and I'm gonna be using both of these, which totals about 1.5 pounds. I just realized I have the sauce here and I never added in oil. So we need about 1 teaspoon to 2 teaspoons of oil. It's up to you how much you wanna add, but good thing we hadn't finished this up yet, so that's all right. I can feel that the sugar is all dissolved. So let's go ahead and pour this all over the beef. A little bit of sugar there at the bottom, but not much at all. Okay, let's get this into our crock pot. Lid on. I'm gonna cook this on low for about 6 hours, 6 to 8 hours, kind of depending. It is currently 11 o'clock, so that will be perfect timing. All right, this has been in for almost 8 hours. The sauce is like I don't want to call it thick, but it's not a thin consistency either. I'm gonna take this out and put it on this cutting board here and just try and shred it a little. And then I might just let the sauce sit for just a couple minutes with the lid off, then put the meat back in there. And if it's sitting in there, because I actually turned it on to high just a few minutes ago to start to thicken up that sauce, if it's sitting there with the lid off, it should thicken up even more. Then we'll mix the beef in with that sauce. Okay, so just push that to the side for a minute and shred this up. You barely have to touch it. Okay, I'm not even gonna put a ton of effort in here. Looks really good. Oh my goodness, you guys. I mean, you can see this is falling right apart. I've got some rice in the rice maker. We're gonna put this on top of rice. If you really want to thicken up your sauce, take it over to the stove top and put it in a saucepan for just a couple of minutes. That's really going to thicken it up and caramelize it. Let's try this. That's really good. All right, so I'm just going to give this a mix because it's just been, you know, kind of all sitting in one place for a little bit. And let's leave the lid off for about 15 minutes. If you have one of those cool new crock pots, then you can just turn it onto the saute function and it'll thicken up your sauce really easily. All right, here's what I'm doing. I just took about a cup of our sauce out, and I'm gonna heat it over medium-high-ish heat over here on the stove because I wanna drizzle with a little bit thicker of a sauce. We still got some here in the crock pot though. Let's go ahead and put the meat back in there, mix it together, and keep it nice and warm. Another thing you can do is to take the meat and throw it under the broiler for just a couple of minutes and get kind of like those burnt edges, which adds it's a really good flavor. So there's a lot of additional steps that you can take with this one to add extra flavor. If you just want to keep it simple, just toss all the meat back in there with the sauce, mix it together, serve it over rice, and you're good to go. Okay, we're gonna take some of the barbecue or the Korean beef and put it on the top of this rice.
Oh man, that looks good.
Looks good, right?
Man.
Now I do think if you broil it, it's gonna darken up a bit, which does make it more Korean beef-ish. Okay, we thickened up a little bit of this sauce. Let's add some sesame seeds.
Definitely tastes like a Korean fare.
Yeah. We only have black sesame seeds right now, but the white ones would look really pretty. And then top that with some green onion. I am holding these backwards. We have seconds before the battery dies on this camera, so. That's really tasty.
That was really tasty. And perfect for some Cholula. On my plate.
Always putting hot sauce on everything I make. I do think if you're willing to take the extra step, if you pop this under the broiler and it adds those burnt ends, it really is gonna take it up a notch.
Yeah.
Although I think it is absolutely delicious just as is. It's really pretty. I love when I get a piece of beef and there's like a burnt, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
The burnt ends on any type of roast like that is really good.
But this is not dry.
No, not at all. I mean, this is
mouth-watering.
This was crock pot. This is a crock pot meal.
How long have you done this?
It's been in there for almost 8 hours.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's been on low for almost 8 hours. I turned it up high for the last 30 minutes just to get the sauce to thicken up.
And which steak did you use?
The flank.
Flank? Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so,
that's good.
But it's good. It's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that supposed to be Mom's plate?
Those green beans aren't bad.
Right? I put some sweet Thai chili sauce on them.
That's pretty good.
We are making a Greek chicken orzo kind of bowl thing tonight, but I want to get the marinade made up for our chicken before we start anything else. Starting with some oil. This is avocado oil. We need around a 1/4 cup. I also am adding about a 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar. So right around a 1/4 cup, maybe a little more on this one. You guys know how much we love using Dijon mustard in marinades. About 2 tablespoons there. Add some honey, just about a tablespoon. Some oregano. I want to add a decent amount of oregano, probably around 2 teaspoons. I mean, oregano in those Greek Mediterranean flavors, you have to have it. An inch of salt. Since we're using this as a marinade, I'm gonna go a little heavier handed on the salt, in between a 1/2 teaspoon and a teaspoon. Okay, so for this recipe, I am actually going to be cubing my chicken. Drop it right into our marinade. I do cut off the fatty pieces because I do not like it. So I'm going with around, I don't know, in between a 1/2 inch to an inch size pieces. They don't have to be really small, they don't have to be really large. I would say just bite size, whatever your family considers bite size pieces, go ahead and cut them. Okay, let's just mix in the chicken, making sure it's nicely coated. I'm just gonna set this to the side. A zucchini here, or zucchini squash. Let's wash it. Now I'm gonna dice this. I'm actually gonna dice it pretty fine though. I don't want any really large pieces. So I'm just gonna cut into maybe 1/2 inch strips and then dice. And for the sake of the length of this video and sheer boredom, I'll speed this up. Now I probably don't need this whole thing. We're just gonna go ahead and use it. If I put it over in the pot and feel like I don't need all of it, I have another recipe actually this week that calls for zucchini, so I can save some of it. Now you can use regular tomatoes, but I do feel like sun-dried tomatoes will be really good in here. So I'm gonna cut up some sun-dried tomatoes. Okay, I don't really have an amount. I think I'd ideally like to have about a 1/4 cup chopped. Let's just see how, let's see how this looks. I'm gonna try and chop about the same size as I did the zucchini. Feel free to just use regular tomatoes. I saw these in the fridge and I thought, I think that this would be delicious with sun-dried. It is beautiful here today. So I sat outside for probably close to an hour in our hammock swings that we have. All that vitamin D that I'm getting, and I literally feel like I could conquer the world today. I wanna know in the comments, are you more of a fan of summer, winter, spring, fall? What's your favorite season? I've just realized I'm missing what I would consider to be a crucial ingredient for this recipe. We're gonna eat it without it, but Kalamata olives. How do I not have those? I always have Kalamata olives, always, because we eat Mediterranean flavors so often. I'm first gonna start to heat up this chicken. And then really we want to completely cook the chicken through and just set it to the side. You can do both things at one time because the orzo is gonna cook in one pot, the chicken's gonna cook over in a skillet. For the purpose of this video, so that I can show you all of the different components of what is happening in the meal, I'm not gonna do that, I'm gonna cook them separately. While my skillet is heating, I wanted to tell you, I used all of the marinade in my chicken. The reason I did that is because I make up a very, very similar dressing. It's all the same flavors almost on a weekly basis so that we have this available for salads, for dipping, for all different things that we might need it for. So I have this here ready to go. You may want to only use half of what you make up for the marinade and then reserve half of your marinade that doesn't touch the raw chicken so that you can drizzle that over the top of your bowl once these are made. Let's take this chicken over to the stovetop where I have a nice hot pan ready to take this. You can add oil to the pan, but we added oil to our marinade, so I'm actually gonna skip that step. I just have a dry hot pan. Probably gonna cook this in 2 separate batches just to make sure there's no overcrowding and we get good searing on all of that meat. I want to make sure that my chicken is all the way cooked. Great color that we're getting here though, so that part was helpful for having it nice and hot. The chicken is cooked. We're moving over our Dutch oven style pot. You can use a Dutch oven if you want to. And I'm going with a medium high again. Let's put about a tablespoon of oil into that pot and get it nice and hot. Okay, now we're gonna get some good flavor into this pot. Not hot yet, good. Sometimes these handles get really hot. Okay, I'm gonna add in the garlic. That's about 3 to 4 cloves, so a decent amount, and then add in those chopped vegetables. Oh my goodness, it smells so good already. Let me just throw some of the zucchini over the side on the stove because I didn't just clean this the other day. Okay, medium-high heat currently. We're gonna saute these, adding some amazing flavor. Also, while these cook, I'm gonna add a little bit of salt to them, maybe just like a ½ teaspoon. Y'all, if you could smell my kitchen right now, wow. These are just gonna cook about 3 to 5 minutes, allow them to soften up, all those flavors to work together. My vegetables are exactly where I want them to be, so I'm adding a full 16 ounces of this orzo. I'm gonna toast it for just about 30 seconds or so, and then add in 1 cup of bone broth. You can use chicken broth, whichever you prefer. You guys know we always use bone broth. And I get the question a lot, why do you use bone broth instead of chicken broth? And it is because the protein count is actually higher in bone broth. Cooking your things like rice and noodles and stuff like that in bone broth, you're adding protein to it. So we are gonna start by adding 1 cup, about a cup anyway, of the broth. And we're just gonna let that cook for a minute until really all of it has been absorbed. It won't take long, just a few minutes. You can just cook orzo straight on the stovetop, pour all of your water or your liquid in with the orzo and just boil it and cook it down just like pasta. Tonight we're treating it a little bit more like risotto, and so we're adding a little bit of liquid, letting all of that be absorbed, adding a little bit more liquid, letting that be absorbed until we get to that al dente. But it takes a little longer. I do think the extra effort can be worth it if you really want it to be over the top. You can see here that the majority of the liquid has been absorbed. So let's add some more broth, about another cup. Overall, it'll probably be about 4 cups. Okay, mix that together. And again, just let that kind of boil or simmer until that is absorbed. For this last bit, I'm actually going to pour the liquid in, and I'm gonna put a lid on it just to finish this up. Let's just stir it to make sure it all gets around there. I did just taste the orzo. It's still not quite there. And I do feel like it needs a little bit of salt. So we're gonna add a touch of salt. If you want it to go a little bit faster, put that lid on, take it off, stir, put the lid back on. That's gonna help the process kind of move along. Okay, lid on for just a few minutes. At this point, the orzo is done cooking. It looks great. The liquid is all absorbed. My chicken can be put directly into the orzo, and you can just make it a mixture. Or if you want to make it look a little prettier in the bowl, you're just going to throw that chicken back in the skillet that you originally cooked it in, just reheat it for a couple of seconds. If you mix it all together, it still tastes amazing, but I think for presentation purposes, this looks really pretty. Let's turn this on over here just to get that chicken reheated through. That's all we're doing. This is done. I'm going to turn this low. Let's give this a try so I can serve it up. Look how good this looks. All those flavors together. Wow. That is so delicious. If you guys haven't made something from my channel in a while, this is the one to make. That is really good. Popping with flavor. I mean, all bursting with flavor. All the flavors. The chicken is so good. The orzo is so good. Topped with that feta cheese. Delicious. Make this one. We're making somewhat of a casserole. This is smothered burritos. You already know that sounds good. I have 1 pound of chicken thighs that I've cooked up. I've already shredded these so that they're ready to go. We just need to add all of our ingredients. But y'all, all I did was boil this so that we could shred it. You could cook it in your crock pot all day long with some spices, shred it up in there, whatever way you want to make this. Rotisserie chicken would be perfect for this recipe. I'm gonna add some salsa into this. We're gonna add probably, for this amount, maybe 3/4 of a cup. I'm not gonna measure exactly. We're just gonna add and make sure that there's enough so that the chicken won't be dry. I have some left in here though, so if I get to the end and I mix it all together and I think this is just too dry of a mixture, we can toss some more in. I'm also gonna be adding some onion powder. Again, I'm also gonna be adding some oregano. This is a great flavor in this one. Just about a 1/2 teaspoon or so, maybe even less, maybe 1/4 teaspoon. And then for the cumin, which cumin is so delicious in these type of flavors. If you have salsa, period, you need to be adding cumin to it, trust me. We're gonna add probably about a teaspoon of this one. And this one does not shake very well. I don't know what the deal is, but I always end up having to take the lid off. I'm gonna add some green onion into this, and I'm adding some of the green part, and I'm also gonna add some of the white part. I have another green onion out. I'm gonna set it to the side with those herb scissors because I do think it'll be really pretty to add some to the top. And we're also gonna be adding some cheddar cheese. Feel free to shred yours on your own. I said it in another video recently that cheese was, I think it was buy one, get one free, or one of those things. Sometimes they do buy 2, get 3 free. I just went ahead and bought some cheese so we would have it in there. We need about 3/4 of a cup or so. Again, I'm not measuring. I just wanna make sure that we've got some cheese on the inside of each one. Mix all of this together. Now I did a very rough shred on my chicken, but you could make this as shredded as you want. Totally up to you. This is our burrito filling. Let's set that to the side. And we've got the cutting board. That's just so we can prep burritos. I've got my 9x13 baking dish. We're gonna spray this really well. The tortillas that I'm using, these are the best ones, by the way. These are so good. The organic flour by Mission, really good. I'm assuming I'll get in between 5 and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, 5. Let's start with that and see what happens. Let's start to just add some to the center of each one of these burritos. The larger ones are honestly probably better for this, but these kind, they only come in this one size and they're kind of a medium size. So I don't even know if I'm gonna be needing a 9x13, but these go in the pan seam side down. So let's just see, we'll get however many we can possibly get with these, and then we'll see what it looks like. Y'all, I really think for our family, we could fit this in an 8x8. I'm gonna try it, because that's gonna be a really big pan to store afterward. All right. So if you're using the larger tortillas, you probably won't be able to fit it into an 8x8, but I think we're fine. I mean, look how well these fit, just nestled in there. My oven is currently preheating to 400 degrees. These are gonna go into the oven just like this for about 20 to 25 minutes. And while that happens, we're gonna make the sauce that goes on the top of these. Then they'll go back in the oven for just a few more minutes. We're at 375, almost ready. All right, my burritos are in the oven. I've got some butter in my pan. You need about 2 tablespoons or so. This might actually be, it's right at 2 tablespoons. Let's get that melting. Now keep in mind that this is a half recipe that I'm making. So we're gonna add in 1.5 tablespoons of flour, just all-purpose flour, and start to make a roux, cooking off this flour, and then we'll add in our liquids. Okay, let me turn it down just a little. We might be a little high on the heat. You need to be on like a medium-ish. Okay, I'm gonna add in 1 clove of minced garlic, about a clove anyway. Okay, I've got some bone broth here. This is chicken bone broth. We're gonna slowly mix this in and incorporate. So I'm just adding about half first. We'll whisk that together and then I'll add the other half. Now, while that's starting to thicken back up, we're going to add in some cumin. So about 1/2 teaspoon. We're using the same flavors in the sauce that we used in the burritos, just keeping that similar. I'm also adding some oregano, about 1/2 teaspoon on that as well. Okay, continue to whisk, mix together. And I've got my heat, I turned it up just a smidge onto a medium high so that it can start to simmer again, and that's gonna help this sauce to thicken up. I'm also gonna add a dash of salt. For us, we use bone broth instead of chicken broth, so it's a little less on the sodium. So just about 1/2 teaspoon of salt. For just another 2 minutes or so, you can see it's starting to take a little longer to pull together. I can feel it. I mean, obviously you guys can, but you can see those bubbles, so we've got some heat there. It's definitely simmering. All right, once you achieve the desired thickness of this sauce, go off of the heat. So we're gonna move this off the heat to add in our other ingredients. Now, personally, we like a lot of green chilies, so I'm gonna go ahead and add in this whole can. Actually, let me just strain it a bit. It doesn't need to be drained too much, but just a bit. I'm also adding in 1/4 cup. This is Greek yogurt, but you can use sour cream. Creating more of that sauce. It's looking so good. Now we're gonna add some cheese. I'm only gonna add about 1/4 cup because we are gonna be adding more to the top of the burritos when we take them out and finish them up. So we'll just add that in, let that all work and melt together. And then once our burritos come out of the oven, we've got about 8 more minutes at this point, we'll add the sauce to the burritos. The burritos have been in there for about 20 minutes. I'm gonna take this sauce and just attempt to kind of pour all over. I mean, you can spoon it over if you wanna be more careful than I'm being. We're also gonna top with a little more cheese. You do not have to do this, but I do think it'll look nice to have that kind of cheesy layer on the top there. Our garden is currently giving us the cutest little baby tomatoes, so I just cut some of those up so we can add them. Look how adorable. You don't have to do this either, but I do feel like it adds some pretty, oh, I dropped one. It's gonna add some pretty color. It also might be a little risky to add this before it goes back into the oven, but I'm gonna risk it. We're gonna do it, okay? Because I'm ready to clean up my kitchen so that we can eat as soon as this comes out. This is gonna go back into the oven on the broil function, just about 3 minutes or so until that cheese is nice and melty. So let's broil back in. I fully anticipate that this is gonna be crazy hot, but let's try it. I mean, y'all, it looks really, really good. Excellent flavor. Whoa. My family is going to love this, y'all. It is so bursting, so much flavor. That is absolutely delicious. Wow. Okay. There's really not a lot of heat. I thought there might be because of the green chilies, but there's not. But that sauce on the top, over the top. Delicious. Let's make some autumn grain bowls. These are so delicious. You're gonna wanna try these for sure this season because it has everything that you could want in it. If I haven't said this here before, I am a huge fan of bowls. I love places like Kava where you can go and you can select all the different things that you want to just make almost a different flavor every single time. I've actually been working on a video for a while here of all of our favorite bowls, so stay tuned because that's gonna be coming out soon. This is one of those dinners that you can make different components at different times of the day and then just assemble everything when you're ready for dinner. So you don't have to just stand in the kitchen for 30, 45 minutes, however long it takes to make this. I personally am gonna start first by making up our dressing. So this is a maple balsamic dressing. Okay, stay with me here. I've got some fresh rosemary off of the garden. And then I have some fresh thyme. I wanna chop up this rosemary and make it really fine, okay? So I'm gonna go through it several times. Overall, you probably want just about a teaspoon to 2 teaspoons of this finely diced, finely chopped rosemary. Also, when I was getting this off of the garden, I accidentally almost picked the lavender instead of the rosemary. They look very similar without the flowers on the lavender. I just can't imagine that was gonna go well with this recipe though. Let's take that and go right in here. It's a good amount of rosemary. And now I'm going to take this thyme and just add it straight in. Add some olive oil, about a ½ cup. We might not go quite as much as that, just because I don't know that we're gonna need all of it. Some balsamic vinegar. Use whatever your favorite balsamic is. Looks like I need to get this next time we go to the grocery store. About a 1/4 cup of this one. You guys know, feel free to measure. This is just me. This is how I do it. Maple syrup, pure maple syrup. You need the real stuff for this. Only about 1.5 tablespoons of maple syrup. Add some cinnamon, just about a ½ teaspoon. This is really adding to those fall flavors. Let's add a clove of garlic. So that's a decent amount of garlic in there. And I'm gonna add a pinch of salt. And you guys, I mean, the flavors of this, I know how easy it is to just buy your dressings, but home making your dressings is a game changer. It will change a meal completely because they're just so much better homemade. Okay, so the dressing is mixed, it's good to go. I'm gonna put all these supplies away and then we'll start on the next part. I've got 2 sweet potatoes here, and I'm gonna cut them into bite-sized pieces. Now, you can use rotisserie chicken with this style of bowl. We're not going to be. I'm actually gonna be making some chicken thighs that are gonna go on this sheet pan with the sweet potatoes. So I can cook it all at the same time. It actually takes about the same time, so that'll work out perfectly. For the sweet potatoes, let's add a little bit of oil. I'm using olive oil today. Just a touch here. It's probably a half teaspoon. I don't need very much. I do want to add a touch of salt. Some cumin. Cumin is delicious here. Don't miss out on that. Right around a teaspoon. Let's add some chili powder. About 2 teaspoons, so a decent amount here. Good flavor on these sweet potatoes. That's really important. I also really like to add some garlic powder and some onion powder. Maybe half teaspoon to about a half teaspoon. Oh, that's a lot. Okay, we're good. No big deal. My husband actually just started a fire outside, so I'm a little distracted, just making sure everything is good out there. Oh man, these smell so good already. It's that cumin. It's just this, it's so potent, that smell. I love it though. I'm gonna add a touch more olive oil. Okay, now we're gonna put these on the baking sheet. I'm still waiting on my oven to heat up, so it'll be a little bit for that. But let's prep everything here. Okay. Just spread these out, making sure that they're gonna get a nice, they have nice space to cook. But I do wanna save room because I'm gonna put my chicken on here too, so that everything can just cook on this one pan. I've got my 4 chicken thighs here on the baking sheet, and I'm gonna add the same flavors to the thighs that I did to the sweet potatoes. So, okay, this onion powder just comes out really fast, so, oh wow. I'm gonna leave the lids off because I am gonna flip them and season the other side. Garlic powder barely comes out. What in the world? Add the chili powder and cumin and salt. Now, let me wash my hands and then we can move on with this recipe. I don't know how everybody in my family is gonna feel about this ingredient, but I'm gonna cut up some apple, and that way, if we want, that can be added to it as well. Another option, other things that you can add are, I'm actually gonna dice the apple pretty small too, just side note. You can add kale. That's another, that's a great fall flavor. Spinach is fine as well. We do not have any of that right now, so I'm gonna skip that. But if you wanna add green, those are really, really great options. I actually probably will only cut up 1 apple because I just don't know how they're gonna feel about the apple in the bowls. We'll see. I know my husband and I will eat it, but my kids love apples. I just don't know how they're gonna feel about it with the other stuff. The last thing we need for this recipe is some walnuts or pecans. We have pecans, so that's what I'm gonna use. I am gonna chop them up a little bit. So I'm just gonna do about a handful. We'll leave them over here to the side, just here on the cutting board, so that when we assemble the bowls, they're ready to go. Obviously you can buy them already chopped up, but we usually just have these in the pantry because they're available for snacking if needed, or recipes. Over near the stove, I've got some wild grain rice that we're gonna cook in the rice maker, and then also some quinoa. Quinoa is really easy to make. It's just 1 part quinoa, 2 parts water, and then add some salt to that. We're gonna bring it to a boil and then turn it down and just let it simmer until all the water is evaporated. So I ended up going into Food Lion and getting kale because I just feel like this needs kale. I went ahead and took all the stems off and broke it into pieces. Take a little bit of that dressing and pour it over the kale, and then prepare to get messy. Okay, you can even add a little bit more olive oil, just a touch. So what happens is the oils, when you massage the kale, break it down. And it's almost as if you sauteed it. It breaks apart kind of the overall crunchiness of it, and it makes it really soft. It doesn't take much, but the easiest way to do it is with your hands. All right, so everything is really prepped. We're just waiting on the sweet potatoes to finish cooking, the chicken to finish cooking, and the quinoa. Here's how I'm gonna serve my bowl. So we're taking some of the rice. If you know that everybody will want quinoa in your house, I would go ahead and combine the quinoa and the rice together just to make it easier on yourself. Let's put some quinoa in here. Okay, I'm gonna add in some of this kale and then toss that together, and that's my base of the bowl. All right, so next you just start to put the ingredients on that you know that you're gonna like. So I would like apples on mine. I'm definitely gonna put some of the nuts on mine. Like I said, we're gonna use some of these just for garnish like so. Adding some of the sweet potato, which adds a really beautiful color. And then obviously we gotta have the chicken. And I think because I covered up the nuts, I'm gonna add a few more. Just a little. And then, okay, add some cheese. If you want, you can keep it cheese-free. And then take that dressing that we made.
That's a nice looking dinner.
And you have the autumn grain bowl.
Wow.
There's a lot of components with this. That's really the best way that I can say it. It's not that you're managing a bunch of different things at the same time, but it's just, there's just a lot. So if you don't really have the capacity maybe that day to deal with a lot of the different things going on, then maybe make this on a day when you feel like you do. Maybe a Saturday meal.
Like if you could do the rice, the wild rice and the couscous together, I'm not sure you can. Or if you had one or the other already in the fridge from a previous meal.
It's not that it's hard by any means. Like I want to make that clear. It also may have been, I felt a little more stressed making this because we left in the middle of it to go get our daughter at a friend's house. We stopped by the grocery store. When we got home, I spilled flour all over the floor when I closed the door to the pantry.
I spilled couscous on the oven, but that's not a shocker on the stove.
I just cleaned it.
Yeah, after I spilled stuff the other night. I didn't mean to.
And if you have a gas grill, you know the pain of cleaning this thing.
Y'all.
I mean, a gas stove.
This is what my wife gives me to scoop the couscous.
Okay, but in my defense, you know where the other utensils are.
Who scoops it with this? It might as well be a fork.
Let's try the food, for goodness sakes. All right, I'm gonna try everything together, or at least as much as possible. Did you put everything on yours?
I did.
You got kale on yours?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
My word.
I take back everything I just said about needing the capacity to do this. You just need to make it. You need to come up with the capacity to make this.
Every flavor in there is so good.
Does this not taste like fall, straight fall in a bowl though? Like if you're ready for fall, you need to make this. Because that, to me, it's just fall.
And I may have already said it before, but that's my absolute favorite time here in North Carolina and in our house. The colors are just beautiful, and the birds and all the activity. I don't know where you're from. If you have some beautiful autumn colors.
Oh, leave us a comment below. Tell us where you're from.
Yeah.
Y'all, this is really good.
It's so good. All the elements together. That is so good.
That dressing is delicious.
And you can't, I mean, you could, but the cheese makes the difference too, because what would you say? You have the acidity and the sweetness from the apple, but that savoriness, I guess, from the cheese.
It's savory, but it's also, we use the Kerrygold cheddar, and it's a pretty rich cheese.
Yeah.
So I think because everything else in that is more fresh flavors, you get this like aged cheese flavor with it too. All the flavors here, you guys. It's delicious. Very, very good.
This is delicious.
I knew it was going to be good just looking at it and just thinking in my, like conceptualizing all the different ingredients together. But it's actually way better than I thought it was going to be.
It tastes as good as it looks.
Absolutely. Yes. You definitely need to make this one. This is one of those recipes that we have made time and time again. We change it up depending on what's available in the refrigerator and in the pantry. We'll just add whatever kind of stuff we have available. So don't feel like just because you don't have every single thing that I add into this recipe that you can't make it, because you absolutely can. We are gonna start this by making the little marinade that the chicken goes in, and then the chicken will go in it, but we're also gonna use the marinade for the rest of the dish. But that way it can be sitting in it for about 15 minutes or so while I prep everything else. So into this bowl, I am adding about a fourth cup to a half cup of olive oil. Now for us, we're going a little lighter on the olive oil, more toward the fourth cup, because I'm using chicken thighs. And so for me, I'm just gonna cut down on that. You can obviously use chicken breasts for this recipe, but it is gonna bake in the oven. And I've said it here before, we prefer, if we're gonna bake chicken, that we do thighs. They just come out better in my opinion. But if you're looking for a leaner option, feel free to go with the chicken breasts. Let's add in about 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. You can use a fresh lemon, but I really need mine for tomorrow, so we're just gonna use this jar. We need about 3 to 4 cloves of minced garlic. Let's add some salt. I'm gonna add about a teaspoon of salt. You can go less on this if you want, but it is a marinade. I wanna make sure there's really good flavor here. About 2 teaspoons of oregano. A teaspoon of thyme, a teaspoon of Dijon mustard. Now, let me tell you, if you are not using Dijon mustard in your marinades, you're missing out. There's great flavor in this. It is not just a sandwich condiment. It's really, really great for dressings and marinades. You can also add pepper to this if you want. We are going to just mix everything together here, and then I'm gonna be adding in my chicken thighs. Now, you guys know I like to cut off the fat from my chicken thighs a little bit. Obviously, I know it's still a more fatty protein, but I do like to cut some of it off, and then we're gonna add it into that. All right, so we've got all of our chicken in here. We just kind of move it around a bit to make sure that we're gonna get that marinade over all of that chicken. Oh my goodness, it is gonna be so good. If you guys have been here for a while, you've seen this very similar marinade be used on steak bites before when we make Greek bowls. It's so good. I mean, this is just the marinade. We love Greek flavors. We love Mediterranean flavors. This is like our go-to. All right, friends, I've got some washed potatoes here. I'm going to be dicing these, and I'm actually going to dice them significantly smaller than I probably would on any other sheet pan. And that's because sometimes when we do sheet pan, I will actually cook the potatoes first, then add the protein, because the potatoes can take longer. But the smaller you dice them, the shorter the cooking time. And I'd like to cook it all together tonight on the same pan. So that's what we're gonna do. We're just gonna make maybe 1/2 inch diced pieces. So they're just gonna be smaller than normal. Now this next ingredient might come as a little surprise, but I can use onions in recipes like this, even though my husband doesn't like them, because I can just use a little bit and it's not mixed in, right? So he can pick through it and easily just not eat what he doesn't want to eat. I just add a little bit. I just think that having a little bit of onion on here, first, it looks really pretty. Second of all, I love the flavor, so I like to have it in there. And then I also like to add a little bit of green. So we've got our bell pepper. Now again, I've done this plenty of times without bell pepper because we didn't have it available. It wasn't in our fridge, so obviously I wasn't gonna use it, but it's available this time, so it's convenient to just go ahead and throw it on there, making sure it doesn't just go to waste in the pantry, or in the refrigerator, I should say. And let's add a little bit of red pepper as well. Same process. All right, so that chicken has been marinating for a few minutes now. I'm gonna take it and just lay it on our parchment lined baking sheet. You can use parchment, you can use foil if you'd like. I mean, foil, you can wrap it around and it's gonna protect your baking sheet. You won't have to wash it quite as heavily, but that's what we have parchment paper right now, so that's what we're going with. So we're just gonna lay them out wherever you want, but save that, okay? Now we just start to take all of our other ingredients and go all around. So now we just take that marinade that we have left over and just kind of drizzle all around. And then I just give it a light toss just to try and get that marinade kind of spread out a little bit. Now I'm gonna sprinkle with a little bit of extra oregano and a little bit more salt. Just wanna make sure all the vegetables have good flavor. The next thing I add is some Kalamata olives. These are sliced, you can use whole, it's up to you. Just kind of toss them all around. Y'all, tell me this looks delicious. You know it does. I was gonna add tomatoes, but I don't even know where they'll go. Let's see if we can add a couple here. I don't know if I've ever told you guys, but my son eats these right here, these gourmet Mendley tomatoes. We go through a pack a week easily because he eats them like a snack. We'll walk by and grab a handful, and that is a snack for him. He loves them. The last thing I like to do is top with a little bit of feta cheese. Totally optional. I know a lot of you don't like feta cheese, and that's okay. It's okay. You just want to top with a little bit of feta if that's your thing, if you like feta. But y'all, come on. I mean, look at how beautiful and how good and all these amazing flavors. Again, if you want to cut down on the fat content, then don't add the feta cheese. It's a totally optional ingredient, but I mean, it looks delicious. We're gonna bake this at 425 degrees. It usually takes around 30 to 35 minutes. I always just watch it and make sure that stuff doesn't overcook though. It also obviously depends. If you have bone-in thighs, those are gonna take a little bit longer to cook. These are boneless, skinless, so they don't take quite as long to cook. So 425 degrees. This looks so delicious. I already know we're gonna love these flavors because they're just flavors that we love. Chicken is great. Just so you know, I ended up cooking it about 37 minutes. Again, ours is boneless and skinless. So just depending on what type of chicken thighs you're using, it can make a difference. Let's try some of the vegetables. They're perfect. You have that marinade on there that we added to the chicken. It adds great flavor to those vegetables. So every single bite is bursting with that Greek Mediterranean flavor that at least we definitely love. We've had a very rainy week, and today, yet again, it is rainy. So we're going to make a crock-pot meal. I feel like this is one of those that's just heartwarming and hearty when you have a day like today. This is a crock-pot creamy tikka masala, and I've heard people say tikka masala. I've heard people say tikka masala. Whenever I order at a restaurant that one of our friends from church actually owns, he says tikka masala. So however you say it, there's a couple adjustments that I've learned, especially over the last, I would say, year in the crock pot that make a crock pot meal so much better. And I'm gonna share them with you. I shared them in my last crock pot video, some adjustments that we made. We've been doing this on repeat and it is so good, okay? So just stay with me because those tips are really gonna help you. If you've had a crock pot meal in the past and you're like, you know, this just isn't for me, this really might make a difference. I've got my measuring cup here and we're using this really to mix all of our ingredients, all of our sauce that we're gonna be using. And we're just a family of 4 here tonight. So I'm gonna be making 1 pound of, what am I looking for? 1 pound of chicken. And we're gonna serve this over rice. So we need about a clove of garlic. I'm gonna put it here into my mixing cup. You can absolutely grate your own ginger, but we love this ginger paste. About, oh, it's all coming out, okay. About a half tablespoon of that ginger paste. Let me clean this off. Also feel free to add shallot, onion, whatever your favorite flavors are in here. This spice right here, garam masala. Now, this is one of those that if you don't make a lot of Indian flavors, it might be a little bit of an investment for you. I think this one was maybe around $6.99 or something like that, right around $7. We make a lot of Indian flavors, so I like to have this one on hand. I have made this before without garam masala. Okay, we're doing a tablespoon of this. So it's not a small amount, and that's why I say, I mean, I have made it before without it, but It's really such good, I'm gonna add a little bit more. This is a half tablespoon measurer, by the way, which is why I'm doing it twice. The ingredients of this are cardamom, cinnamon, cloves, cumin, black pepper, and coriander. So if you already have all of those, you can definitely just make this. You don't have to feel like you need to go out and buy it. This is turmeric. 3/4 of a teaspoon or so, right under a teaspoon of the turmeric. Few tablespoons of Greek yogurt. This one is non-fat. You can definitely use a full-fat Greek yogurt. Honestly, most recipes would want you to do a full-fat Greek yogurt. We always have non-fat in our house, so that's what I'm going for. I'm just gonna start to combine this a little bit. The aroma of this, it's wild. It's so good. Okay, I'm gonna add some chili flakes just to give it a little bit of heat. If you have a crushed version, that's fine too. I mean, I'm really just adding a very small amount, but we like a little bit of heat on this. Okay, let's just let this sit together for a minute. And I'm gonna pull out the next bit of ingredients. We need about a half can of tomato paste. I never use a full can of tomato paste, so I end up freezing it and I just put it in little baggies, portioned out to what I need. So I just thawed it out in this little cup that had hot water in it. Now here you can add water, about maybe a 1/4 cup or so, just a little bit of water. I actually made bone broth the other day, so I'm just gonna pull from that. Mine is very gelatinous, so don't be alarmed. Our bone broth that's homemade typically is a lot more gelatinous than what you would get in the grocery store, so don't be alarmed by that. But you can use chicken broth, chicken stock, water, whatever you prefer, totally fine. Stir all that together. Now, I have a pound of chicken thighs already in my crock pot insert, and this is where the trick comes into play. Okay, let me explain and then we'll move on. One thing that I've learned recently about the crock pot is whatever you're cooking is gonna produce its own liquid. So a lot of times you get to the end of a crock pot meal and you're like, why is this so liquidy? It's not even saucy, it's just liquid. So one thing that we only add a portion of the sauce while it's cooking because you want it to cook in those flavors. You really want the sauce to enhance the flavor of the protein. But then before the meal is done, you're gonna dump out the liquidy portion of the crock pot and add in the rest of the sauce. Okay, so the chicken will be cooked at that time, but we're adding some more sauce. We're only gonna let it really heat up for like 30 minutes or so, just depending on the recipe, and it's gonna be more saucy, less liquidy. So if that's been your issue before, that's kind of our new trick. So with that tip in mind, we're gonna take the sauce that we made and just add maybe a third of it. Okay, so we're just adding enough that it's going to cook in with this chicken and just enhance those flavors, you know, really add flavor to the chicken, okay? So we're really just cooking it just like this. I'm probably gonna cook this on low for about 4 hours. You could do high for 3 hours, you could do low for maybe like 5 to 6 hours. I typically find that overall, I want chicken thighs to cook for 4.5 to 5 hours on low, but I'm gonna come back in about 3.5 to 4 hours to add something else. So we're still gonna have some more cooking time. So let's start with that. Low, 3.5-ish to 4 hours starting. This next part you could do later, but I'm gonna go ahead and just mix up the rest of the sauce so that it will be ready to go. And I won't have any more, well, I still have a little bit to do, but it won't be quite as much work to do later on. This is a can of coconut, this is coconut cream. You can use a can of coconut milk. Use the unsweetened one, that's a big deal. Otherwise you're gonna get a pretty sweet dish. And more than likely that's not what you're going for in this dish. I'm only using a half a can. So the other half of the can, y'all, if you're not home making your, what's it called? Coffee creamer? So good. So the other half of the can will get used in that. So our sauce is made. I'm just gonna throw this in the refrigerator so that it's ready to go for later. There's a little bit of a brown butter thing that we're gonna do. It's an optional part, but I am gonna do it to really enhance the flavors of this dish. Okay, let's take a look here. It's been about 3.5 hours. Do you see all that extra water that has basically come out of the chicken in the cooking process? That's what we need to get rid of. That's why most people do not like crock pot meals, that right there. So we're gonna change it. So we need to pull out the cooked chicken. I'm just gonna set it into a bowl for a minute. You can just pour this out with the chicken in there if you want, but I wanna be safe and not pour any chicken down the drain. So I'm gonna be really careful and just go ahead and pull the chicken out. Now we can take the insert and dump the liquid. My chicken is gonna go back here into the crock pot, and we're gonna pour over all of the rest of that sauce. If you would like to cube your chicken, you can. I find it really easily just kind of breaks apart as you're mixing this all together. So pour this all over. It's gonna make a lot of sauce, guys, okay? So you can make less if you want, but we like saucy. We like it really saucy. So now you're gonna have a sauce, not a watery sauce, a good sauce. So we just really want this to heat through, and it won't take long. Now, another thing you can do if you really want this sauce to kind of thicken up a little bit is offset your lid on the crock pot just a bit so that it doesn't retain all the moisture inside of the crock pot. I've done this a couple times. Something it's really helpful for is making apple crisp in the crock pot. It'll still allow everything to heat through, but the moisture won't stay in and reincorporate, kind of like dripping back in, you know? Okay, so we're gonna put this back over there. I'm gonna turn it back on. Let's keep it on a low. I think it's fine. We still have maybe an hour before we're ready to eat, and then we'll make the rice over here in the rice maker. While that was finishing up, I made some naan so we can have naan with dinner tonight. So good. It's really easy to make. It's a little time consuming, but pretty easy to make. If you're using a bigger pan than I did, you can probably cook more than one at a time, but we cooked 8 pieces individually. Now I'm gonna move over to the stovetop because there's a quick little thing that I wanna do with kind of a brown butter, sesame seed type of thing. And that can just be our topping for this recipe. So I'm gonna move over there and do that real quick, and then we'll be ready to serve. I'm using the pan that I made the naan in because I don't feel like washing another one. So I'm gonna add about 2 tablespoons of butter into this pan. It's already nice and hot. I'm gonna add about a tablespoon of sesame seeds. We do not have white sesame seeds right now. I only have black, so that's the ones that we're gonna use. Add some paprika, just a touch for a smokiness, and just a touch of red pepper flakes for some heat. With the butter frothing like this, that's what you want. It's gonna make a brown butter type of consistency. So we're looking for those brown flecks, which it's a little hard to see right now just because I've got the paprika in there. Okay, you see those brown bits at the bottom? That is what we want. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the heat. Okay, so this is what happens when you use that trick. You get a sauce, a nice creamy sauce, not a watery sauce, the perfect consistency. This is parsley, but cilantro would be delicious. My cilantro is not grown enough to actually get any leaves from it. And then I'm gonna top that off with some chive. Or actually, these are called bunching onions, not chives. Restaurant worthy, really pretty looking. Restaurant taste worthy too. That is good.
It's really, really good.
Oh my goodness. It does have a little bit of kick, just like ever so slight. If you don't want that, don't do the chili flakes. That's gonna prevent any of the spice because everything else has spice in flavor, but not spice in heat. But
yeah, and great for naan too. You can
wow.
Just wrap a naan around that.
Oh, we're gonna be putting that in bowls to dip the naan in for sure.
Oh yeah.
Very, very good, y'all.
And what was this?
That is, it's like a brown butter with, it looks like caviar. Brown butter with black sesame seeds. It's typically made with white sesame seeds, but it's more for the look than anything else. It just adds some depth. Looks like.
Oh, mama.
You got a chili flake. There's chili flakes in that part.
In that one?
Yeah. Yeah. This is really delicious though.
Yeah, it is. It is
truly,
good.
the depth of flavor in this one is very good. Y'all, that's a crock pot meal. Okay, I told you this is how you make the good crock pot meal. pour out that extra liquid before you mix in the sauce.
Yeah. You said this was parsley?
Yeah. Don't you think it would be good with cilantro?
It may, but it may overpower it.
Yeah.
I mean, parsley is good too. And,
Yeah.
and the onions you put in there. Yeah, it's good. It's really good. Can't wait to eat.
We're making this spring summer beef tip casserole. Amazing flavors in this. It's easy to make in that although it takes a lot of time in the oven, you don't really have to do a lot. So it's kind of like prep it all, put it in the oven, and it's there for a couple of hours. I do already have some of my beef tips here. This is probably around a pound. You could use more if you feel like you need more for your family. But before we do anything with this, I'm gonna head over to the stove. We need to turn our oven on to 325 degrees, and I need to get some oil started in my Dutch oven for searing off this meat. Okay, just about a tablespoon or so of oil, just enough that you can use it for searing. And I'm gonna turn my heat onto a medium high. Okay, for this, all you really need is some flour, some salt and pepper. I'm gonna take a little bit of salt. Just make sure you season it really well. This is the main point of seasoning for this casserole-ish kind of thing. I'm gonna add pepper. And then we're also gonna toss in about 2 tablespoons of flour. I probably have about 2 tablespoons in here. So whenever you're making this, you can make it in a Dutch oven, just like I'm doing. You can actually also make this in the crock pot. I'm choosing to go with the Dutch oven method just because I feel like we've been using our crock pot a lot lately, which is fantastic, but I just wanted to change it up. I wanted to do something a little bit different. Okay, I'm gonna add just a touch more flour here. And then once that oil is heated in the Dutch oven, we can sear this. So the main thing is we're not cooking it all the way through. We just want a good sear. We want good color on this. Okay, let me take that over there. Okay, it is a poppin'. So we're gonna go ahead and put this in there and start getting that, getting a sear. Okay. Okay, so we're just letting that get a little bit of color on each side. That flour is gonna help to add a beautiful crust. I'm actually gonna turn my heat back up a little bit. I had turned it down because it was popping on me. Okay, let's start to turn these a bit. I know we probably got, yeah, see, we're starting to get some color. That's exactly what we want. We want it on pretty much all sides though, if we can get it. You can see how all that beautiful color is starting to form. I mean, that is exactly what we're looking for. Like, that piece right there, oh yeah. I'm about ready to finish this up. Technically, I wanted a Guinness for this, okay? But the grocery shopper that was doing my order, she said that they didn't have any single, and we don't drink, so I didn't need all the other ones. I just said, pick up just any ale for me, just a 1 can. So this is what we're going with. We also need some beef broth, and then we've got some minced garlic that we're gonna add in to the braising liquid, and then that's gonna go into the oven. So we're adding about 2 cloves of garlic. You want a decent amount in here. That even might be a little more than 2 cloves. Stir that around, just let that cook for about 1 minute or so. I can already tell this is gonna be so good. I turned my heat down a little bit. It's on like a medium-low right now, just because I didn't want the garlic to burn. Y'all, if you've ever had burnt garlic before, it is nasty. Bitter, not good. So we're making sure that doesn't happen. Now I'm adding in the beer. This can is a pint, so it is 19 ounces. We're just gonna add about 10 ounces. So maybe about half. And then also about a half cup. We're using beef bone broth. Just feel free to use beef broth or whatever your preference is. Just about a half cup. If you're concerned about the alcohol and you don't drink, you don't have to be concerned because the alcohol actually will cook off. But if you don't want to use it at all, that's completely fine. You can just substitute out the amount of beer or ale or whatever it is that you're using and use more beef broth or bone broth. Okay, I'm just gonna give this a quick stir. My oven is almost preheated to that 325. I've turned my stove off. And we're gonna put a lid on. Yes, it is a well-loved, what's this called? Dutch oven. Now this is gonna go into the oven for about 3 hours. I'm leaving the lid on. I am gonna check it about once every hour or so and make sure that the liquid hasn't evaporated or anything. And if it has, then I will add more. So I am gonna be saving this. I am gonna be saving the bone broth so that we can add more if it needs it. Setting my timer for 60 minutes so that I can check it, and then I'll just do that 2 more times afterward, and it'll take about 3 hours. Right at the 3 hour mark though, that's when we're gonna add in some of the other stuff that's gonna go into this, and it's gonna be over the top delicious. I love all of these kind of flavors. You guys, you're gonna love this one too, I know it. While the beef is in the oven, I'm gonna go ahead and cut up the vegetables that we need. So we're gonna be using a zucchini, some red bell pepper, some green bell pepper. I've got more on the garden if I need to pull them because my green one doesn't look great. We're gonna get what we can out of it though. And then I'm thinking about maybe adding some shallot too. Now I am gonna keep these cut fairly large just because that's the way that I had planned to do it. So maybe like 1 or so inch pieces. About like that. I checked the beef at the 1 hour mark, then I reset the timer. We currently have 17 minutes left until we get to 2 hours. So obviously I'm doing this pretty far ahead of time, but we have some work outside that we need to do. Let's get what we can out of the green one. I had actually planned to make this recipe last week, and then you know how sometimes the weeks go, plans change, things happen, so these veggies that I bought for this, I still want to use them, but they don't look quite as good as when I got them. I'm gonna cut this about the same size as I did the peppers. Like I said, I've got some shallot, so I'm gonna go ahead and add that. All right, so the last thing that we'll have to do is get some couscous prepped, which if you've never made couscous before, takes like 5 minutes. So I'm not too concerned about getting that one ready to go. The vegetables I knew were gonna take a little bit more time to chop and prep and all that. So this is done, the beef is in there. I'm gonna check it again in about 13 minutes and then we'll go from there. Here is the 2 hour mark and you can see how much that liquid has decreased. I still think we would be okay for another hour, but just to be sure, I'm gonna add a touch more. Now that will be plenty. We should be good. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the lid back on and let this go for another hour. All right, my husband got home. We went straight to work in the yard. We have been doing all the things to try and get our yard in order. So we've been working out there for a little while. Now I'm coming in because we need to get these vegetables into the, every time, you know, the pot we're cooking in. The Dutch oven. We need to get this stuff put into the Dutch oven. It's gonna cook in there just for about 10 to 20 minutes. We still want them to have a little bit of crunch to them, so I'm not gonna cook them too long. Okay, let's just give that a quick stir. It already looks delicious. It smells delicious. And we're gonna get this back in there and then I'm gonna get started on the couscous so that that will be ready as well. All right, we've got my pot over here on the stove and then in my measuring cup, I've got 1.5 cups of, we're using beef broth or beef bone broth. I have about a tablespoon of butter in there as well. And then I also put in around a half teaspoon of salt. Add that to your pot. We're gonna let this boil. Okay, we have a boil, so we need to put the couscous in there.
Okay,
Give that a quick stir. Take it off the heat. So I'm gonna turn my heat off, put the lid on, and then move it off the heat and just let it sit for about 5 minutes. All right, let's check this, see how we are. Oh man, it looks so good. Let me give it a little stir. Okay, also for the couscous, you just fluff it up a little bit. You can top this with some thyme or parsley or oregano or whatever your favorite thing is. I just added a little bit of the broth that we cooked this in to the bowl so that it would have all those really good flavors. Let's just try a bite here. That's delicious. I love the texture of the couscous, and then everything else is a little bit larger, so you have the larger pieces of the peppers and the steak the beef tips that we have in there. But the flavors of everything are so good. Braising that meat pretty much all day, this is very good. And I know it took a long time, but it did not take a lot of effort. So this is one you should absolutely try. We're making a pasta that has some sausage and some sage. It sounds delicious. I am actually really excited about this one. I went ahead and prepped all of my ingredients. I'm pretty sure this is all of the ingredients that we're gonna need just so that this would flow really easily. Over here on the stovetop, I have some water that I'm boiling because we need to cook up these noodles. We're gonna use bow tie noodles. Use a short pasta. That's basically what you want for this recipe. I don't know that I would suggest a penne just because, I don't know, you want more of a flat pasta in my opinion. Y'all, I just pulled out these nuts because the recipe calls for walnuts, and then I realized these are not walnuts, these are pecans. And one of the reasons that I was making this recipe is because I thought, oh, we already have walnuts, we're good. We don't, they're pecans. We're gonna roll with it. Let's just try it, let's just see what happens. I am gonna put these in a little baggie and we're going to crush them up just a little bit. Okay, into a baggie and just give them, I use my meat mallet to do this, just give them a little bit of a crush. Too much air in the bag. There we go. Not much. I'm just going to put them in a frying pan, just let it get hot and toast them up. I'm not gonna put anything on them. This is about a 1/4 cup of sage. We don't have to do anything to it. That's gonna be over on the stove. But I do wanna take this time and take it off of the stem so that that is ready. We're just pulling the leaves off. So personally, I'm thinking around a teaspoon of thyme is a good amount. Okay, we've also got some parsley here. I'm just gonna rough chop this with my herb scissors and put it right here into this little bowl. All right, let's just put our sage in a little bowl here too, so we have everything we need over here. Now there are a couple different ways you can go about this. I've got some Italian sausage here. Obviously, you don't have to buy it like this. You can just buy ground Italian sausage and you can accomplish the exact same thing. And it's what they had in the grocery store that I thought would work really well for this. So we're gonna remove the casing. Now you could just cut this into pieces if you want, but I'm gonna take this and just make little meatball size, little like meatballs out of it. So just kind of rolling it around and making little meatballs. But obviously this would work really well if you have ground sausage too. I'm gonna make mine relatively small just because the pasta is kind of small. So I don't wanna have huge meatballs and then, you know, little pasta. And let's move over to the stove side of the kitchen and get all this fixed up. Add some oil to our pan that is already hot because we toasted those pecans in there. But I'm gonna get it to more of a medium high. We don't need it on high. Add our meatballs to the pan and get these cooking. We want to get these nice and brown. I'm actually going to put an apron on because this is one of my favorite sweaters or sweatshirts. I wear it all the time and I'm bound to get something on it making this. Okay, look at that color already. That's what I'm talking about. So I'm going to try and get color on all sides. One of the things about this recipe is you want to undercook the pasta just by about like 1 or 2 minutes. So it's ready. We're gonna go ahead and drain that off. And I'm just gonna let it, oh, I shouldn't have poured out all the pasta water. I needed some of that. Don't be like me. Save some of the pasta water. All right, once those are cooked through, take them out. Just with a slotted spoon, you can put them on a plate and just set them to the side. Now you can see mine I still have plenty of oil in the pan, but if you do not, you might want to add a little bit more oil for the next step. I'm not gonna be adding any more at this stage. Take that sage that we have, I think I said we have about 1/4 cup, and we're going to drop some on the stove. We're going to put this in here and let it crisp up, okay? Now raw sage is really not very good, but if you let it crisp up, it can be delicious. Really doesn't take very long at all. We're gonna let that just go for about a minute or 2. And then we will also take this out and set it on a plate. I'm on a medium heat right now, just for reference. It was more of a medium high with the meatballs in there. I did turn it down a bit just because I didn't want to burn this. So you can see we're getting some nice color. There's some nice crispiness to this. I know you guys can't feel that, but you can kind of see it happening. That's good. So let's take that out, and we're gonna put that on this plate as well. I'm going to add in, my mushrooms didn't look great, so this is not a full thing of mushrooms, but we're gonna add in what we have and start to just cook those. And in addition to that, I'm gonna add in, I only have about 1 tablespoon of butter, but you can go up to 2 tablespoons. I just don't think we need to, just looking at the amount of stuff that we have. And then I'm also gonna add in that thyme and really start to let that cook. This is just gonna take maybe 2 to 3 minutes. I turned my heat down to a medium-low. My pan seems to still be very hot from cooking those meatballs. I am gonna add a few pinches of salt here. And right before I see that the mushrooms are getting nice and soft, I'll add in that garlic. Don't wanna add it too soon just to make sure that garlic doesn't burn. Okay, just let that cook for about 30 seconds, 45 seconds or so, just under a minute. Y'all, the smell, oh my goodness. The smell's incredible. I have 1/2 cup of half and half. You can use heavy cream, but we're just gonna use half and half tonight. I'm gonna add in those few tablespoons of parsley. Adding back in the meatballs. Okay, we've added in the meatballs. We're going to add in the pasta and mix all of this together. Now, the reason that you want to reserve some of your pasta water is because if you feel like if everything's not really coming together, then you can take some of that pasta water and start to add it in slowly, just so that it'll start to pull everything together. This is how you serve this one. Take some of those toasted, well, they should be walnuts. They aren't, but they should be. Take some of those and just top with a little bit of those toasted nuts. Then take some of your crispy sage, add some of that. This is so delicious once it's cooked like this. Then top it with a little bit of shaved Parmesan. Let's take a little bite of everything together. I definitely want some of that sage. That is a 5-star dish. I mean, you guys saw not a lot of ingredients. Such a good pasta that's different flavor profile. You need to try this one. For dinner tonight, we are making a creamy chicken pesto pasta. I'm starting with some of these little snacking tomatoes, the gourmet medley tomatoes that you guys know we love. And we need to actually cut them in half. So I'm gonna do that real quick. Let's do about 10 ounces. I'm gonna throw them here onto the baking sheet. You can put them in a bowl because you are gonna be tossing them in a little bit of oil and some garlic, but I'm just gonna do it all right here on this baking sheet. And I'm using my toaster thing, because my toaster slash air fryer slash all the things, because I don't wanna heat up our whole oven right now. It's really struggling. When I do heat it up, it takes a very long time to heat up. I think that's enough. It's all, you know, depending on how many you would like, so go with that. Let's just do a little drizzle with some oil. Add in, or add to, I guess I should say. It's ready, so I really need to hurry. Some minced garlic, toss around, and we're gonna let these roast for about 20 minutes or so. Okay, so we have our tomatoes over roasting. We've got a pot on the stove that's got some water in it. It's boiling, or I'm getting it up to boiling. And then I have a pan over on the stove that has a little bit of oil in it, and that is for these chicken breasts that we have here. I took them out, I sliced them in half this way because we want nice thin slices for this, but we need to season before we do anything else. So let's season with some salt, making sure that we give these some good flavor. And I'm gonna season one side over here. I'll put the seasoned side down into the pan and then flip, and then I can season the other side. Okay, let's add some pepper. And some paprika. Now, this is a meal we're trying to move pretty quickly tonight. We actually have church tonight. And so I'm throwing together this meal. It's a good, hearty meal, great flavors, gonna be super filling, but I need to get it done kind of quickly. So this is one that you can do pretty quickly. There's several components to it, but it's not hard. Okay, so my pan is nice and hot. Let's take the chicken, and it's gonna go seasoned side down. Hopefully I can fit all these in here. Now we're just cooking this chicken for about 5 minutes on each side. I did just step over and wash my cutting board so that that would be ready when these come out, because we're gonna end up slicing this into strips for the top of the pasta, or for the mix in the pasta, whichever you prefer. So adding salt, pepper again, and we'll add paprika. Always making sure that we've got great flavor. Over here, you can see those tomatoes are working. We've got about 10 minutes left, which is perfect. My water is almost there. It's almost ready to put in that pasta, and then the chicken is cooking up. We're gonna flip that in just a minute. We're using bow tie pasta, and I need 8 ounces, which is half. I'm gonna do a little more. 8 ounces is about half of the box. I'm gonna set that over here. We've got our pasta. It's almost ready to go in. And we lost one. Time to flip the chicken. Oh man, this is gonna be so good. That is cooked to perfection. Love that sear. So delicious. Okay, so about 5 minutes on this side. Okay, we've got a good cook on the chicken here. So let's take this out. I'm just gonna go right back to the cutting board that I washed. I've got my heat turned down to low because we're gonna add some other stuff in. While the pasta is finishing cooking, let me let this rest for just a minute, and then we're gonna cut it into slices. Okay, heat on low. I have 1/2 cup of heavy cream. I'm adding in about a 1/4 cup of pesto. And store-bought pesto is the way we're going today. Okay, that's about a 1/4 cup, maybe a little more. We'll do a little more. Start to mix this together. Super easy, guys, super, super easy. Okay, let's just let that heat through. Like I said, we're on a low temperature right now, and we're gonna end up tossing this with the pasta as soon as that's done. It's got just a couple more minutes. You know everyone is hungry in the house when they start to gather right here. All right, we're gonna slice this into somewhat of strips, however you want it to be. If you have younger kids and maybe you wanna cube it up so that it's ready to go, that's fine as well. And we're gonna taste it. It's delicious. So good. Oh, I always forget, I wanna try and keep it together because it'll hold that heat in there. Obviously you can wait and slice right before. But my daughter is gonna be walking in the door any minute. And we should be ready to eat. Perfect timing, the tomatoes are done. Now our pasta is cooked and drained. Let's add it in to the sauce. Stir it around. I am gonna bring this up to a simmer just so that it will all kind of work together, just for a few minutes. Okay, here's how we're serving this one. Pasta first. Top with some tomatoes. Come on, oh my goodness. Top with some of the chicken. Pine nuts would be another great addition to this dish because you've already got that flavor in with the basil pesto, but this looks so good. Let's cut this piece of chicken in half.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna try with all the elements here. Pasta, tomato, a little bit of chicken. It's tasty.
What's the sweetness you get? Like,
it's the tomatoes.
yeah.
The tomatoes have a little bit of sweetness. The flavor is really good. Awesome.
Yeah, that's tasty.
Super easy dish. I started this at 4:45. It's 5:11.
Yeah, I was logging out of work a little after 4:30 and knew that you hadn't got started.
Right.
So I thought, are we going out to eat?
Because we have church tonight, and so we knew we needed to eat earlier. But yeah, this was a really fast. Surprisingly, even with all the different elements, this was a quick one.
Yeah.
Really good for a quick meal for sure. All right, for this next recipe, we needed a bunch of shelled pistachios. So I had my family work together and they got a bunch of it done. We are going to use the food processor for the base layer of this recipe. I've got pitted dates here. We always have these in our house because they're a great snack, a nice healthy carbohydrate. So about a half cup or so, I'm not measuring, I'm just gonna throw some in there. And about a half cup of the pistachios. I think I'm gonna add a few more. Okay, and we add a pinch of salt to this. All right, now we're just gonna process this together using the food processor. Okay, I've lined this sheet with parchment paper, and you know that this is done when you can kind of like press it together and it holds together. So you need it to be fine enough in its processedness that it will do that. All right, so we're gonna press this into the dish. I'm getting all the way to the edges, and I parchment lined so that it would be easy to take it out. Pressing, making sure it's really sticking together, okay? That's kind of the point here, that it's making a crust that's gonna hold together. I probably should have like buttered or oiled my fingers. Water actually works better than the oil. All right, really getting a nice compacted crust here. That's what you want. I'm gonna pop this into the freezer while we make the rest of it, the topping that's gonna go on it. All right, so I have 3/4 of a cup of cocoa powder here. It's unsweetened, nothing in it really, just straight cocoa powder. This is melted coconut oil, about 1/3 cup. Go ahead and pour that whole thing in. A 1/2 cup of maple syrup. We need a touch of vanilla, about a 1/2 teaspoon, a pinch of salt, and a very slight touch of cayenne pepper. I mean like very, very slight touch, okay? Mix all of this together. You want it to be nice and mixed, combined, smooth, all those things, okay? So we're just gonna whisk until it gets there. Obviously, feel free to use your mixer. Okay, now I'm gonna add in some pomegranate seeds, about a 1/2 cup. Okay, so these are just gonna get folded in. Okay, so now we take this and we're gonna spread it all over the top of the mixture that we had in the freezer. Smooth it out, pressing it down. Okay, now take some of those extra pistachios that are crushed And those can go all over the top, which just looks so pretty. A few of the pomegranate seeds as well, those can go on the top, which just, I mean, look, it looks like Christmas. So pretty. Now I'm gonna gently press just so they'll stick a bit. Very gently. Because I don't want them to be in, but just stuck enough that they're not gonna come up. All right, so this is gonna go into the fridge for at least 30 minutes and it's gonna be nice and hard when we take it out. So here we have these, I don't even know what we wanna call these. They have a fig base. There's some pomegranate, some pistachio that you guys helped with. Now, one thing I want to mention with these, we're just taking little bites, but because we are trying a lot of different desserts. One thing I want to mention with these is they can only sit out for so long and then they don't like completely fall apart, but they become like a granola bar texture. So they're a little chewy? What's the word here? Flimsy? I don't know, that's the best word I can come up with. So you do want to keep these in the fridge until you're ready to serve them. Yeah. You can leave them out for a little while, but then pop them back in the fridge or freezer.
What kind of chocolate is dark?
Regular cocoa. That's good.
That first bite, you bite into the pomegranate and have that pomegranate juices flowing into the rest of your bite.
That is really unique. And y'all, this is probably the cleanest dessert out of all of these because it was very homemade. We use a lot of figs in our, it wasn't figs, it was dates. Not figs, dates. I think I said figs earlier, but we use a lot of dates and figs and things like that in our house. So that's why I use them interchangeably so often. But all of the ingredients in this are very, very good and overall really healthy. This is delicious.
Yeah, it really is.
Highly, highly suggest making this one.
So good.
That's good.
Yeah. Our daughter is saying this is so good.
It kind of, when you first bite into it, it kind of tastes like that box of chocolates that has the cherry in the middle almost.
But not a cherry, obviously.
No.
It's a pomegranate. But yeah, this is so unique. All right, I'm a big fan of these, for sure.
The pomegranate's the star there.
Yeah. That's really good, y'all.
That's delicious.
Y'all need to make that one, for sure.
Our verse today comes from 2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come, the old has gone, the new is here. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope that you got some inspiration from my channel during 2024. I cannot wait for 2025 and all the things that we've got in store here. I hope that you have a wonderful new year, and I pray many blessings on you and your family. Have a great week.